Hello everybody, Dozr here bringing you a new video. Today we are going to be looking at the banned and restricted announcements in Errata bulletin posted just a little while ago by LSS. Let's get right into it. Banned and restricted announcement in Errata bulletin, January 12th by James White. Briar has clearly been the best deck in Classic constructed since her release, winning 63% of the Living Legends points for the National Championship season. While new strategies emerge over the course of the competitive season that can compete with and beat Briar, such as Oldheim, Ice Lexi, and Kano, it has become apparent that how the Briar hero card functions, along with her prevalence at events of all levels, is proving negative to the overall enjoyment of playing Flesh and Blood. Today's announcements aims to improve play experience as well as rebalance the format. Alright, Functional Errata. Functional Errata is basically saying here that we want to address the balance of the game. They want to ban things if they're problematic, but in the case of a hero, they can't ban it, so they're going to errata it. So, background, they basically go on to say here, and you can read the whole thing, I'll link it in the description, but effectively they say that Briar was never intended to be able to defend for 4, 5, 6, whatever, on a single non-attack action. In their playtesting, they didn't see it as getting to that level, but it has been invalidating strategies that try to attack because you just literally can't race her, because she will always be able to leverage the block whenever she needs to and then still attack. And so it's really breaks the fundamental trading pattern of the game. And so they have errata the Briar hero card to only trigger once per turn on Earth embodiments. This is a big change, and I'll go over that at the end in like the recap. But just for now, Briar Earth tokens once per turn. You can only make one Earth token. Otherwise, Briars receive no changes. Banned and restricted announcement. This announcement is bringing forward the banned and restricted announcement scheduled for February 2nd. The reason that date was chosen was to allow for the conclusion of the Tales of Aria competitive season and to finish all the other championships. They've decided to instead bring the announcement forward and exempt the Australian New Zealand National Championship from the errata and bans announced today. So, effective January 17th, Ball Lightning and Plunder Run are banned and constructed, and Ball Lightning is banned in Blitz. Duskblade is also banned in Blitz, effective January 17th. The reasoning for Plunder Run. It is normal for 6 to 9 copies of Plunder Run to be included in Briar and Chain decks. While drawing multiples of this card is clunky and it takes a full turn cycle to set it up for maximum impact, this card is often the linchpin of the spikiest turns that are often impossible to recover from. The release of both Lightning Press and Spellbound Creepers has added additional potency to an already pushed card effect. Of concern, even more so than the power level of this card, is the play experience it creates. Plunder Run frequently makes hand evaluation default to defend with my entire hand and hope for the best. We believe this play pattern that occurs multiple times per game due to the prevalence of Plunder Run is not aligned with the positive play experience. Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning looks innocuous on the surface and does lend itself to some interesting gameplay. The decision to ban Ball Lightning is mostly centered on reducing the consistency of the Briar deck in support of opening the door to other aggressive decks to re-enter the metagame. Ball Lightning typically is played as a 6 of in Classic Constructed and a 4 of in Blitz, giving Briar decks the critical mass of lightning cards for fuse effects. Attack action cards that weave lightning can buff, and perhaps most importantly, attack action cards with unconditional go again. Without Ball Lightning, card selection, tension, and trade-offs exist when considering Briar deck construction. Ball Lightning ticked too many boxes. Post errata and bans, we expect Briar to continue to be a competitive deck that is also enjoyable to play against. By the way, James White, you probably want to update that sentence and add an A in that sentence. So, Dozr summary time. First things first, Briar losing access to her multiple Earth Embodiment tokens means you can actually race her now. This is huge, because even if this was the only change, this would be a big factor in determining whether or not Briar can race Aggro Katsu, race Red Herald Prism, or any number of other things, because now she can't just block an Erudition, for instance, with one card just super easily. It didn't come up all the time, but the fact that if she was mixing arcane damage in with the physical damage on things like Bramble Spark or Rites of Lightning, then she would be able to get so much advantage that you really couldn't effectively combat. So this is a huge change. This is great. Ban and restrict announcements. As we all may recall, when we looked at my video from before, talking about the state of the game, the biggest things that I called for was the banning of Plunder Run or an errata. especially with Plunder Run and Ball Lightning. These are the two cards that I talked about back in my earlier video, and I am very glad that they decided to look at these cards. And the reason is because at the time, I was mainly saying, and I'll link to this video in the description so you can click on it, but the main thing I was saying was that I think they should just ban Rosetta Thorn, and they could probably errata Plunder Run, is what I had said. And also they could have made a rule change to Ball Lightning to not work with Arcane. That was the big thing that I said. But I'm happy that LSS went a step further and just outright banned the problem cards. That being Plunder Run and Ball Lightning. Because without Plunder Run and Ball Lightning, the Rosetta abuse becomes a lot less problematic, and then obviously the other Runeblades can still keep Rosetta Thorn and still have a good card. But Plunder Run being abused by Briar and Chain, as well as being a card that kept creeping up and being just way, way too impactful for how, just as a card, it was just way too strong. And then Ball Lightning being able to synergize not only with itself, multiple copies of itself, other cards, but then to also combo with arcane damage in a disgusting way, and also basically pay no cost because the 0 block doesn't really matter since you're not blocking in that deck anyway. And it has go again. It costs 0. It does everything you could ever want, and it was just too efficient. So I'm very glad that Briar is having Ball Lightning banned and Plunder Run being banned. That is going to make Briar far, far less threatening in the metagame, and it will allow for other characters to come in and take her place. This is great news for Prism, because now the biggest problem with the Briar matchup before were these two cards. So, for instance, Ball Lightning was the first one that was a problem, because Ball Lightning, in addition to giving her tons of consistency, synergized with Channel Mount Heroic, as well as being a huge, huge problem for Spectral Shields, because of the way that the Ball Lightning effect is worded, it would basically just chew through Spectral Shields as if they weren't there, and that made it really hard to block out breakpoints, especially when they pumped cards with Plunder Run or etc. It just became really, really difficult to block effectively because you just lose your shields too fast. In a combination with all the damage that you were having to take and block out, finishing with Rosetta, which was basically impossible to stop anyway, just made it really hard to keep your shields alive. It's still going to be difficult to keep your shields alive versus Briar, but she will no longer have the ability to chew through them without using Rosetta nearly as effectively, and she will not be able to throw as many zero-cost go-agains that synergize with everything else that she's doing on those channel turns, though she will still have access to cards that synergize with that card. Ball Lightning would not be one of them. The other thing about Plunder Run being banned is huge, because Plunder Run was easily the best play that Briar had, like on any given turn. She plays it out of Arsenal. She gets +3 on anything that she plays. It's basically a Nimblism. It's basically a Weave Ice or a Weave Lightning, whatever. She gives go again to whatever she's playing, and you have that draw effect last the entire turn. That effect was way too strong, and we could see that because it was just being played in max copies as much as possible, like in every deck, like we said in my last video talking about Plunder Run. So again, if we were looking at the recap, it was that there were every copy of Plunder Run was being run in all these decks. So I'm very happy about this news. Briar has been very oppressive to the point where it invalidated a lot of strategy in the game and made the games very binary and not fun at all. It removed a lot of the depth out of the game and a lot of the long-term strategy and thinking about pitch and things like that. So, and on the other hand, I'm really happy because if Briar can pivot to a different strategy, maybe actually using lightning cards, actually using earth cards, actually using fusion as a mechanic, we could actually see Briar still be powerful, but not be the Cheerios Briar, spamming Briar that we've been seeing so far. So hopefully that'll make Briar more fun to play against, and then she'll still be strong enough, hopefully, to be a contender in the meta alongside the other Runeblades, who are losing less than she is. Viserai doesn't really use Plunder Run, and Viserai is already very strong. And Chain is already, he was using Plunder Run, but he also is doing pretty well right now. So Briar is now just being brought in line with those characters, which I'm all for. So yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video here to talk about the ban list updates. Obviously, we have to do some testing against the new Briar list to see how Prism specifically fares going forward. But at least for now, it's going to be a big difference, specifically when you run Red Heralds. It's still probably going to be very, very difficult to block out Briar. But without Plunder Run, it's going to be a lot easier to prevent them from just breaking through tons of damage on a turn. You'll actually be able to contest them now and have an actual fair match. So thank you, LSS, for making the choices that I don't want to say that I'm thanking them for doing the things that I said, because I did talk about these exact two things, these two cards, Ball Lightning and Plunder Run, and I tried to give banning Rosetta as like an alternative for not banning those cards. But I am happy that the Earth embodiments were touched because they were ridiculous, and were very counterintuitive to how the game is played. Specifically because, like, let's say you were racing each other. Briar attacks 3 times on a turn, gets 3 tokens. Her non-attacks block for 5. Nothing you have can possibly compete with that, and it's just giving her way more value than any other character. Especially because normally in Flesh and Blood, like, if you get a HP lead, you start leveraging that HP lead to close out the game by holding cards in your hand and attacking with bigger hand sizes than your opponent, who's having to block to stay alive. Briar turned that on its head by simply saying, no, I don't care. I am going to, if you let me hit you, you will not be able to get back into the game and get your own hits and threaten any relevant damage. So I'm glad that Briar has now been brought in line with the actual way the game is played, but she still can get benefit from hitting her attacks to potentially block a bit better with her non-attack actions. That's great. Yeah, rejoice, Prism players. Our nemesis has been dethroned, or at least been knocked down a peg, so that we actually have a chance at winning that matchup. It might even be 50-50 or 40-60, but that's way better than what was effectively a 0% win rate matchup in all, for all intents and purposes. So thank you, LSS, for keeping an eye on the meta. Thank you for being willing to make a fairly big change to the game by banning not only 1 but 2 cards that were seeing tons of play because they were too good, and being willing to also touch the hero ability to try and bring the game into a more enjoyable form. Really appreciate it as a player and as a content creator, and hopefully going forward we won't have to run into too many more instances of cards like this becoming a problem. And wishing everybody all the best. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you later. Peace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like or a comment, and consider subscribing for more Flesh and Blood videos. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe to me on Patreon for exclusive Flesh and Blood video content. Thank you to all the patrons that made this content possible. For the Dreamweavers, we have Tara Blitz. For the Sentinels, we have David Romish, Tim J, Michael Lynch, Joe Gianoli, and Scott Koo. For the Heralds, we have Ike Hagen, Jacob Wilson, and Moonshaker. And for the Spectral Shields, we have Hasiel Diaz.